So, here's a picture of the band. This is a picture of the maze. A very young me, I was 17 I think at that time, just joined the band. And that was Rod Evans, who came to Deep Purple with me. Roger Lewis, the guitarist, Eric Keane, the bass player, and Chris Banham, the keyboard player. They were my buddies at the time. Yeah. I told you about the 3-month gig we had in Milan, the theatre, and how from there we went up to Hamburg. Well, chalk and cheese. Control to lunacy. It was wonderful. We had those 3 months of very sophisticated Italian living with the acting fraternity, and from there we went up to a very funky German dock area of Hamburg, where all the great rock and roll clubs were, the Star Club being the most famous. Anyway, we duly did the trip up through Europe in our rickety old van. We made it, and checked into the hotel, dumped our bags off, and went to the club to set up the equipment. Which was fine and dandy, but by the time we'd got that all done, it seemed pointless going back to the hotel. So we found a little local beer house, of which there were many, and we decided to while away a couple of hours with a couple of drinks. Fine and dandy. So we went to the club and played the first set, and the way it worked in the Star Club, and probably the other German clubs as well, midweek there would be 3 bands, and you would play an hour, have 2 hours off, play an hour, 2 hours off, and you would do 4 hours work a night. And at the weekend there were 4 bands, so you'd have an hour on, 3 hours off, until you'd done your 4 hours. So at the weekends you could be at the club for 13, 14 hours in a day. Anyway, we enjoyed our first set, and we watched a couple of the other bands, and we decided it was pointless going back to the hotel. So we went back to the beer house again and had another couple of beers, and this continued out through the night. Now normally you'd think after 4 hours work you'd be tired. Well, we weren't. We were wired. Totally different thing. So after we finished the last set and all the other bands, we found another little beer house to sit and talk and have fun. Before we knew it, it was time to go back to the club again for the next night's work, because we had the early session. Well, this went on for a couple of nights, and I started to shake, and I couldn't work out why, till I realized I hadn't seen the hotel from the time I'd put my bag in the room. I was having too much fun staying awake. Anyway, with the help of some get you to sleep pills, I managed to catch up and get normal again. But it was a wonderful learning experience in those clubs. I mean, so many British musicians went over there and learnt their trade there, you know. But lots of things happened in Hamburg in those days. It was a funky area. We were down close to the docks, and the nightclubs and the bars, and shall we say the houses of ill repute, were run by the sort of guys you'd expect to run them. And in the first week we were there were 2 of these entrepreneurs who had a disagreement. The end being that one of them was dead, shot. And then the second week, another couple of guys had a disagreement about the clubs they owned. So once the place had shut early morning, the rumour has it that somebody lobbed a hand grenade in there to put the guy out of business for 4 or 5 weeks. Well, the reality and the danger of the situation never really hit you. It's just, wow, we're in part of this crazy manic thing. So as kids, you just looking and enjoying it. You know, this sort of thing doesn't go on at home. Towards the end of the stay there, we weren't playing. We were the next band on, but the first band were playing, and this very drunken person just staggered onto the stage and made them stop mid-song. At the time, this guy's name was Paul Raven, not his real name and not the name he became famous for. He later became known as Gary Glitter, famous, infamous, you know. But he was well out of it, and proudly proclaimed to the few people who were in the club, because it was about 6 o'clock at night, that it was his birthday. The state it was in, I'm surprised he knew what month it was, no matter what day it was. Anyway, he once he'd done that, he wouldn't leave the stage. He started ranting on and carrying on the way only drunk people can. Anyway, there was nobody on the dance floor. It was very empty. Anyway, so a couple of guys at the back there, obviously, getting a bit annoyed with this, so they sent him a beer up. Well, what was in the bottle was not what the brewer put in it. And if we say that the phrase that the beer never leaves the pub means anything to you, you'll know what was in the bottle. Anyway, Paul took a swig of this liquid, realised what it was, screamed out at the top of his voice, "Bastards!" and then did like a Superman flying leap off the stage onto an empty dance floor. I'm not sure what he thought he saw in front of him, but there was nobody there. So he landed splat, passed out, and was duly carried out by the club security. I never saw him again after that, but that was quite a night to remember. And another time we'd had another, should we say, long drinking session, and we'd all missed a night's sleep. And just getting everybody out of bed to go to the club the next night was a successful, you know, venture. Nobody really wanted to move. Anyway, so we got there, and again we were lucky we had the early session, or was it unlucky because everybody still was trying to sleep. So we got there, and the first thing Rod Evans did was get on stage and lie down and go to sleep. The two guitarists, the bass player and the guitarist, Roger and Jack, basically just used each other as a vertical support to stand up. And they couldn't play. Chris, the keyboard player, was okay. He could just about twiddle his fingers and make a couple of noises. And I was in a similar state. And it was the only time I've ever sung on stage, because somebody had to. You know, we had to do the hour. And so for 1 hour, we alternated between two songs. And I had the microphone about here, because I really didn't want anybody to hear my voice. And we went between Sam and Dave's Hold On I'm Coming and a soul ballad called Please Stay. Anyway, we got through the hour and we thought we got away with it until the next night. And the manager came in and said, "I have to fine you." We said, "What for?" He said, "You know what for." I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "But you are the first." First? The first had been fined? He said, "No. We fine people for being late. We fine people for being drunk on stage. We fine people for fighting on stage. We have never had to fine a band for being asleep on stage before." Hamburg. Those 3 weeks are indelibly printed on my mind, and I loved every day of it. Cheers.